Hi everyone, this is Denise Demese, and I am here with Mark Johnson from the Office of Faculty Development. And this is our last faculty development session of the season, so we are glad you could join us. We are proud to present Val Czerny. She is here with us to talk about a critical thinking project that she developed, and she is an associate professor of English from East Georgia State College at Statesboro. So Val, welcome. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody who's attending, and I hope that you enjoy the presentation and have some questions to ask at the end. This project is actually a journal that I've created based on our QEP, our Quality Enhancement Plan, over here at East Georgia State College. And the focus of our Quality Enhancement Plan is critical thinking, getting our students to think more critically in the classroom and, of course, outside of the classroom. So what I did actually was to put together this journal which displays essays of students' work. And the idea was to look for essays that displayed critical thinking skills. And so I asked faculty actually to submit essays. So it wasn't like we asked the students to submit. I asked faculty members to recommend essays that they thought used good critical thinking skills. So I move to the next slide. The reason why I wanted to do this versus a literary and arts journal, which is what we do have one of those, it's called the Wiregrass. The reason why I wanted to do this is because for our literary and arts journal, generally the students edit it and they accept short stories and poems and photographs and artwork, but not essays. And yet a lot of us as faculty members, not just in humanities, but throughout the curriculum, teach our students to write essays. So I wanted to highlight their essays through this publication. It's professionally sized at 6 by 9 inches in print form, and the reason why I did that is because what I've seen in the past coming out of departments where students' essays are published is they tend to be like 8.5 by 11, and they're sort of like Kinko's binding, that sort of thing. And I wanted it to look like a professional journal so that students would be excited about being published in it, and indeed they have been. So what I want to do is in the next few pages just show you the front and back covers as I'm indicating here. Explain why I called it essays, and show you the table of contents. So let's see if I can get to the next. There we go. So here we have the back and the front cover, and I wanted you to see that it actually does have a binding in the center, so it's just like a professional journal that you would get from an association. And I used the balloon because I wanted to subtitle it The Journey of the Mind, and so I thought of an idea that would suggest critical thinking up in the air. And the French up there is Old French, which means what do I know? And that's because it's based on Michel de Montaigne, who was actually the first person who created the genre of essay writing. So that's why we have the old spelling of essays, because that's the Old French spelling. So our logo, I put our logo there on the left, our Think Critically logo, and of course our college logo down at the bottom. And then you'll see that I have a quote by Michel de Montaigne, "There's no end to our investigations." And this was completely supported by our QEP, financially as well. Okay, so then as we continue, you'll see that I have a little box there that explains why this is called essays. That he created his essays in 1575, and he thought of them as attempts. So as I wrote, his written attempts were designed to answer the question, what do I know? So the essays in this journal are designed to show what students know, and they also are considered attempts. So the idea was not to actually ask faculty to give us perfect essays, so none of these are actually perfect that are written by the students, but in some shape or form they demonstrate critical thinking. So what I did was I divided them into different categories. So one category, out to lunch, the other, problem solving, narration with backbone, grist for the literary mill, and metaphorically speaking. And what I'm trying to do, this is just the first volume, but what I'm trying to do is to get it so that it really does show more of across the curriculum. So the problem-solving ones are actually math problems that students followed an extra credit assignment, and they actually wrote out explanations of math problems. And I also have some from Spanish, not written in Spanish, written in English. And then history. But unfortunately for the first one, we still have humanities dominating, so still coming out of English classes. But hopefully for the next volume, I have some biology professors who are interested and want to field some essays from their students, and I want to make it a little bit more across the curriculum in the future. Okay, so just to show you coming up, I wanted to mention how the balloon is shifting, if you just notice that, because the designer did a good job with the balloon moving through the document, or through the journal, excuse me. And then what I did for each essay is to create a meet the assignment explanation. I picked a key quote that catches the reader's attention, and I also put in a box to define the essay's type, its origins, the professor, and the term when it was written. So just to show you, here's the first section, out to lunch. You can see the balloon over to the left, sort of making its way across, and it's going to move in as we go along. And of course, I haven't given you all of the pages of the journal. I just wanted to highlight some areas. So you can see, if I can get the arrow to work here, let's see. There we go. If you can see the meet the assignment, I have the assignment. This is actually an assignment that I gave to my World Lit students. So I'm explaining what the assignment is, and I asked all of the professors to please give me the assignment description. And then over here I have the quote that I've highlighted from Lexis Lewis's essay, A Luncheon with Dickinson, and then here's the box showing the type of paper. It's a response paper. It came out of my World Lit class. I'm the instructor, and then it was the fall term. And so at the end of every essay, I focused on writing 2 commentaries that would pull out why these were chosen for critical thinking skills. And let's see here. This is at the end of Alexis Lewis's essay, and you'll see that I have strong rhetorical elements in the essay, or those that use critical thinking skills, and then creative elements, because I think that creative thinking is also tied into critical thinking. And usually that involved style and techniques. So I tried to sort of categorize my little editorial comments based on those 2 main concepts. You'll notice that Lexis Lewis's essay had a works cited page, so I included that. Not all of these essays used citations, so that was okay. It depended on the assignment. And then the next one under Out to Lunch is by Alejandra Ramirez Sacedo. She wrote about Colombian angels. So that was just the next one up for that section. And I had 4 in that Out to Lunch section. And then next came problem solving. So you can see the balloon is moving in a little bit. And this was just to describe student writing in math classes at East Georgia. And I wanted to highlight in this part that students appreciate examples. So what this assignment is based on is this extra credit assignment that Professor Bob Marsh here at East Georgia gives to his students. And what he does is he asks his students to imagine that they've just been successful in taking a test about some particular issue, and some friend or some associate in a faraway country is about ready to take a similar test. And so he asks them to imagine that they're writing a letter to this fictional person in a faraway land explaining the problem. And so it could be in letter format or essay format. It ended up being sort of a combination of the 2 of them. So that's a description of that. And the reason why I said why students appreciate examples is because for the journal, we actually printed it. So we actually have print hard copies and distributed them among our campuses. And one of my humanities colleagues told me that she had passed them out to her students, like the previous class, and then she came in one morning and she was going to get set up on the computer, and she saw that the students were gathered around in a circle looking at, in particular, these essays that Bob Marsh gave as the assignment, and these essays that appeared in essays. And she said that they were saying, wow, so this is what what Professor Marsh wants us to do. So in other words, he gives the same extra credit assignment each semester, and this sort of oriented them so that they could see, get an idea of what the professor was expecting. And then you'll see that in my comments, they're on the right-hand side. They're not all that extensive. Sometimes they're more extensive, depending on what I see. And some of the essays are shorter, too, so I didn't have as much material to go on to comment. And then here's a balloon moving through narration with backbone. And here's an example from a history class that's coming up. And I just want to show you, in this case, my comments were really, really more extensive. Took up half or most of a page, actually. This is a really good example of a student thinking on his feet. It was actually an in-class writing, and he did an excellent job at organizing his ideas and staying with the topic. And you can see how long this is. I just backed up to show you how long this essay was, and it's actually in class, handwritten. And then Grist for the Literary Mill. In this category, I had one of the essays written in a Spanish class. And as I said before, it's written in English, but one of the topics that the professor focused on was illegal immigration. So she asked them to write a piece in English. What she first had them do, actually, for this assignment, under Meet the Assignment, is she had them respond and write something about illegal immigration based on class discussion, and then she had them watch a film and then write it again to indicate whether or not they felt that their ideas changed after watching the film. And in this case, his ideas didn't change, but he developed his position in this essay. Okay, so that's the rest of that one. Okay, so right now where I'm at is my next task in using essays to support our QEP is to think of it as a tool now that it's been published. And so the way that I'm trying to get our faculty actually to use this as a tool is through their assessments. Assessments in class, and then finally at the end of each semester they submit an assessment report. So what I did is soon after it was published and we distributed it in people's boxes, we put them out in the departments, we put them out across campuses, in the library and other places. What I did then was I sent out a little notice. I'm using actually what I learned from Benjamin Franklin from his autobiography, where he said that he would prepare the people's minds by scheming with pamphlets. So what he would do is actually prepare these pamphlets, on his publishing press, and he would get the idea out there. And then his main goal was to get people to actually come up with the idea themselves rather than it seeming like he was coming up or somebody else was coming up with the idea. So I was kind of using that psychology. I put out these notes explaining, oh, you probably have seen this new publication out there, and now that you've seen it, please pick it up, flip through it, and start thinking about how you might use this in your classes. So I just sent out a note. I actually put it in people's boxes, faculty boxes, and I sent it out as an email. And then after they had a bit of a chance to do that, this is back in April, I then sent a full letter. So not that I'm expecting you to read all this, I'm just showing you that then I sent out a letter where I went into a little bit more, and I wanted to show, for example, how they could use essays as a tool. So in one of my paragraphs there, I'm just saying what follows is a list of different specific skills you may likely be assessing in the courses that you're teaching. Accompanying each skill are the titles of some of the essays in essays that can assist you both in developing and then assessing critical thinking in your classroom. So for instance, if you assign lab write-ups in your science classes and you want your students at the beginning of the reports to signal an outline or a foretelling of the material that will be provided in the body of the lab write-ups, then you can use some of the essays to demonstrate what a forecast looks like. And indeed, in other classes, they might be teaching the idea of a forecast. So I kind of just set up an idea that professors could use. And here I'm just in my bullets. I'm just trying to say, okay, this is what I explained in my letter. What follows is a list of specific skills you may be assessing in your courses. And then accompanying each skill are the titles of some student essays that can assist you. So after my little preliminary letter, which is a little bit more long than my initial note, I then used our logo as bullets. And you can see I have the male head and then I have the female head and male head. And what I did was I went through each essay and assigned it to a particular topic. So many of the essays are repeated in these lists. So for example, in one of them, I wrote, if you're assessing students' abilities to organize their ideas in a conscious, deliberate fashion in order to provide a logical delivery of thought, have students consider and evaluate these two essays. If you're assessing students' responses to a reading, like a response, to research, to an activity, to a lab, here are some good ones to look at. If you're assessing interview techniques, and I actually tried as best as I could to think of all the different avenues our professors might use. So on another page, if you're assessing students' abilities to relate to an historical figure, here are some essays. If you're assessing students' abilities to use theoretical, political, or psychological concepts, here are some essays they could look at. If you're assessing students' abilities to incorporate humor, which is very difficult many times for students to do, actually 2 of them showed a good sense of humor. If you're assessing students' abilities to qualify their voices, here are a couple. And then once again, next page, another list. On this page, if you're assessing students' abilities to recognize a problem and to attempt either to solve it or to recognize a solution, here are a list that you could, refer to. Or if you're assessing students' abilities to cite correctly, even citing, I made sure that using MLA citing in any case that those were correctly displayed in the journal. Okay, so what I wanted to just explain is, okay, so what am I doing? So what I've been doing in my 1102 classes, English 1102, Comp 2, is I've been assessing through a survey at the end of each semester. So I've done this for 2 semesters so far. And I really focus on metaphors and the use of metaphors in my classes. So the students have been answering my assessment pretty well, and it's a multiple choice 15-question survey. And they've been doing pretty well, but they're not doing as well as I would like. So what I decided to do is to use one of the essays that I put in essays under the metaphorical segment. And what I'm going to do, I haven't done this yet, but what I'm going to do is use this essay under metaphorically speaking. And here I'm just showing you that what I did was in the past I've used 15 multiple choice questions numbered in Arabic numerals, so 1 through 15. And I didn't want to change that because I want to follow and see my hopeful improvement, see the students hopefully improving. So I didn't want to change that. And what I'm doing then is adding to it. So what I'm going to do is here I'm just showing you what my assessment has looked like before, 1 through 7 right there, goes up through 15. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have the students read Duncan Walsh's essay first and then answer 5 questions previous to the 15. And I'm going to still ask them the 15. So just to show you, I've already photocopied his essay. I kind of am explaining at the top there, here's the directions for questions 1 through 5, but I've numbered them Roman numeral 1 through 5. And I'm going to have them read the essay. So I photocopied Duncan Walsh's essay, student's essay, and then I actually also photocopied my comments about it. And then I've added the Roman numeral questions, but this is going to be what they're going to do first. And my Roman numeral questions are getting the students to respond to really questions that I've asked in the 15 questions that are numbered Arabically, only this time I'm showing them how Duncan Walsh in his essay applied it. And because what I'm noticing in my own assessment is that students are good at memorizing and then giving answers based on, like defining what a metaphor is, that sort of thing. But then applying it is where the critical thinking comes in. So what I'm doing here is I'm showing them an example of how Duncan Walsh applied the skills that I'm looking for. And then hopefully once they see that and connect it to what Walsh did in his essay, then they're going to answer the 15 questions that I've asked in the past. So I'm hoping that I'm going to get a little bit better response in terms of their answers, and then maybe they'll be able to associate the application with the other answers. So I'm going to just see how that goes. So here I'm just showing you a setup for, and just not after Thanksgiving, actually, I'm going to give this to the students. So the other thing that I did to encourage using essays as a tool is to create a bright space or D2L space about our QEP. And you'll see that on the first page of our the D2L page, I've got essays prominent, and then I have a link that leads to the content page. And then when they go to the content page, you'll see I've just shown you a picture of the content page so that faculty can go there. I have my letter posted there. I have all of those ideas I just showed you posted there, and they can go as a resource to see what are some ideas behind how they can use essays. And if you're interested in how I got this all put together, the company that put together the actual journal for me is Jack of Arts. And then I just have a question section at the end. I do want to indicate to you that I do have at least 2 faculty members who have gotten back to me, one from our math department who is saying that she's going to use something similar to what Bob Marsh did for extra credit. I'm not sure if she's using it as extra credit, but she's actually working on using that in her classes as an assessment. Another social science professor indicated that he's used it as a resource for whenever he needs, he says, pick-me-up ideas for his classroom. And he's not using them specifically, I guess, for assessment, but he's using it as raw material to do other things with it. So I'm hoping he'll actually use that in a report so we could see a little bit more what he's doing as, you know, as his pick-me-up idea. Okay, so that's it. That's my presentation. I went over by a minute, but was just wondering if there are any questions.
Thanks so much, Val. It's really a rich project and at so many different levels. You know, I love how it's both student work and assessment, but also tied in with the QEP and all that. It's really quite nuanced. For those of you who are participants, if you have a question, you can either raise your hand. You'll see a little hand icon there on the right side of the screen, or you can enter it in the chat, and Mark and I will keep our eyes out for that. It usually takes a minute for folks to chime in. We're happy to wait. Well, while we're waiting, I have a question for you. So you said that the QEP folks paid for the cost of, I assume, the designer and the printing of the journal?
Yes, I was very, very fortunate. So I'm not very good at fundraising. You know, my background is English, so I haven't done much fundraising actually, and so that would have been daunting if I had to raise the funds. I may have to in the future to get this moving further, but so far our QEP has been really, our QEP whatever foundational people who back at it have been really, really great at supporting this. And I've only gotten positive responses back from it. I haven't seen anything negative. The cost was quite a bit, but fortunately we did have it in the budget. And what's going to happen now is our QEP is actually coming around to a close after the 5th year, and we're moving it into a standing committee. So after the 5th year, it's going to move into a standing committee, and then we're not quite sure what the budget is going to be for that. But most faculty are saying, yeah, they want a second volume, and they're really looking forward to that and contributing to it. So hopefully we'll still have the funding to keep it going.
Yeah, that's great. That's always a concern, but I agree that it looks so pro that you can see why faculty and students would be super excited to share it, especially if they're featured in there.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because just to tell you how excited the students were who were published in this, after it came out, before I distributed it to everybody, I had copies ready to give to the student writers. So I emailed them and I said, okay, come by my office and to pick up your copies. And I figured, I think I did that like on a Monday, and I figured, well, you know, by the end of the week I'll have some students coming by. One student, right after I sent it, I got an email immediately back, and he said, I'll be there in an hour. And then I had students showing up like that afternoon. Basically by that day, that Monday and that Tuesday, they had all come by to pick up their copies, and they were just so excited.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has encouraged students to see themselves in print. It makes a big difference when they see themselves in print and when it's something professional looking as well. And now their voices are coming across to the other students. So the goal too is for other students to see, hey, look, you can do this too. You know, this isn't that daunting of a task, and it's kind of nice to be able to have your voice out there. It brings them into the scholarship world without having to do much. They're just writing something for the class.
Yeah. Now, you may have mentioned this early on in your presentation when I was still dealing with technical issues, so if that's the case, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. But how did you, did the different professors submit their favorites, or did they submit many and you chose? How did you decide what was going to be published?
They submitted what they thought were good skills, and then, of course, it came down to, okay, what was the assignment? And, you know, discussing with them what the assignment was and understanding why they figured these were good critical thinking skills. And there were not that many, because I actually said, okay, I won't be able to do that many, so I didn't have them actually give me a lot. But I actually only had to put aside maybe just about 3 out of the ones that I got. So for this first volume anyway, it wasn't like I had a lot to have to take in, because the ones that they gave me, they had already looked at, and they had already thought, yeah, these are good. And I agreed.
And then you did the comments at the end, tying it in with the QET. Yeah,
so I did all that.
Gotcha.
Which was a lot of work. So for volume 2, if we're able to get one going, I'm going to request help. I wanted to just kind of get it off the ground and see what our faculty thought, and everybody's really, as I said, positive about it. So I have faculty members I've already asked, okay, I'm going to need help this time. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, you know, we'll get more in. And like I said, I'd like to get it more across the curriculum too, because I was glad to know when I came to East Georgia how many of our faculty assign writing assignments that are not in humanities. So many of our faculty outside of humanities assign quite a few writing assignments that involve essay writing. So if we could bring more across the curriculum, like I said, biology, that would be great to get in some lab reports maybe to show like what they have to do for a lab report.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I'm seeing, you know, I think that's definitely a great trend that we're seeing across higher ed. When you first were talking about the math problems essays, I thought, what on earth? That is so cool. And I'm glad you showed us an example of that, because it was helpful to see some possibilities that maybe some folks wouldn't normally think of in certain disciplines.
Yes, and like I said, one of our other math professors is excited about this, and there are actually 2 of our math professors who are using these. The other one I'm a little bit still foggy about how she's going about it, but she told me that she's using them as well. And it's given them a different focus, you know, that they could actually use it to enhance critical thinking skills in their classrooms.
That's great. That's great. Well, we thank you again so much, Val, for finishing up our seasons with such a great presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark to wrap it up.
Okay, thanks, Denise.
Thank you very much, Val. It was really interesting, really good. We will, we're putting together next semester's program, and we'll